They see everything. Your vacations, your celebrations, your carefully curated happiness. They know when you're winning. They know when you want to be admired. They know when you're trying to be seen. And yet, you've never seen them. No selfies, no profile pictures, no proof they were ever there. In a world where visibility is treated like existence, their absence feels unsettling. People don't like what they can't place. They don't trust what they can't label, so they explain it away. They're shy. They're insecure. They don't like how they look. They're antisocial. Those explanations feel safe. They protect the illusion that everyone secretly wants attention. But that illusion is wrong, because people who never post their photos online are not invisible by accident. They are invisible by choice, and that choice is rarely simple. Social media looks harmless on the surface, a place to connect, to share moments, to express yourself. But psychologically, posting a photo is not neutral. It's a transaction. When you upload an image of yourself, you surrender control. Control over interpretation, control over permanence, control over how long that version of you gets to exist. Once it's online, your image stops being yours. It becomes public property. Anyone can project onto it. Anyone can compare it. Anyone can judge it silently. Most people accept this cost without thinking. Some people crave it, but others sense the danger instinctively. They understand that visibility always comes with extraction. Let's talk about judgment, not the obvious kind, not insults, comments, or hate, the quiet kind, the kind that never announces itself. A pause while someone looks at your photo, a subtle comparison to someone else they saw 5 seconds ago. A conclusion formed without awareness. Humans judge automatically. They don't need permission. People who avoid posting photos aren't afraid of judgment because they think they'll lose. They're uncomfortable with judgment because they understand how crude it is, how it flattens complexity, how it turns a human into a symbol. A face becomes a rating, a body becomes a statement, a moment becomes evidence, and once you're reduced, nuance disappears. Then there's comparison. Social media doesn't function like a mirror. It functions like a scoreboard. Who's happier? Who's more attractive? Who's more successful? Who's aging better? Even people who don't want to compare end up doing it. The brain is wired that way. For many, comparison becomes addictive. Validation becomes proof of worth. But for others, comparison feels corrosive. Not because they always lose, but because they see how artificial the game is. They see that most photos online are not memories. They're performances, moments stripped of context, edited for consumption. People who avoid posting photos often opt out because they refuse to turn their identity into content. They don't want to package themselves. But fear of judgment in comparison is only the surface. Underneath it lies something deeper, something quieter. Psychological safety. Photos freeze time. They lock you into versions of yourself that no longer exist. A smile you forced during a year you barely survived. A confidence you borrowed when you didn't feel whole. A body you later felt disconnected from. People who have lived through emotional instability, identity confusion, or mental health struggles know how fragile identity can be. They know the self is not static, and they don't want growth to be archived publicly. They don't want healing documented by strangers. So they choose fluidity. They choose the freedom to change without explanation. Introversion often gets blamed here. But introversion is misunderstood. It's not about being shy. It's not about hating people. It's about sensitivity. For introverted minds, being seen by many feels like being touched by many. Every glance takes energy. Every reaction costs something. Posting a photo invites attention, and attention accumulates. Over time, it becomes exhaustion. People who never post their photos aren't hiding. They're conserving. They choose depth over broadcast, presence over performance, meaning over metrics. There's another layer most people overlook: identity control. When you post photos regularly, you outsource your narrative. People believe they know you, based on angles, expressions, moments taken out of context. They fill in the gaps themselves, but people who never post their photos resist this shortcut. They want to be known slowly, through behavior, through conversation, through time. They understand something subtle. Mystery is not weakness, it's insulation. But invisibility has a cost. Silence invites projection. People assume things. You're distant. You're cold. You're hiding something. And sometimes those assumptions hurt because humans want to be seen, just not dissected. There's tension here between privacy and belonging, between safety and connection. Most explanations stop here. They say people who don't post photos are mindful, secure, emotionally mature. That sounds flattering, but it's incomplete. Because for some people, not posting photos is not about protection, it's about power. In a world addicted to exposure, withholding visibility becomes an act of control. When everyone reveals themselves, the unseen observer holds leverage. They know others before being known. They watch patterns form. They notice dependencies. They move without leaving trails. They change without explanation. They remain undefined. And what remains undefined is difficult to control. Digital systems rely on predictability, consistent faces, consistent personas, consistent behavior. People who refuse this consistency disrupt the system. They don't give algorithms what they want. They don't stabilize into a product. Think about how social media rewards repetition. Post the same version of yourself. Reinforce the same identity. Become familiar. But people who stay invisible remain flexible. They can evolve privately. They can shed identities silently. They can outgrow versions of themselves without public permission. They don't owe the internet continuity. That freedom unsettles those who are trapped inside their digital selves. And this is where tension peaks. Because invisibility isn't passive. It's active observation. People who never post their photos often see what others don't. Who performs happiness. Who disappears when validation dries up. Who posts confidence to hide instability. They see cycles. They see addiction. They see how identity becomes entangled with metrics. They understand the system because they're not drowning in it. Now comes the twist. What if people who never post their photos online aren't hiding from judgment? What if they're studying it? What if silence is an absence, but positioning? Because when you step far enough back, the system becomes visible. The hunger for validation, the fear of irrelevance, the endless loop of exposure and reinforcement. Those inside the system rarely see it. Those outside almost always do. And there's one final layer most people never consider. Silence online doesn't just protect identity, it reshapes power. Because in digital spaces, visibility creates vulnerability. The more you reveal, the more predictable you become. Your habits, your emotional cycles, your need for approval. Predictability is easy to manipulate. People who never post their photos deny the system something essential. They don't feed it a face to memorize. They don't reinforce a persona that can be targeted, mirrored, or pressured. They remain unreadable. And unreadable people are difficult to influence. That's why their silence feels unsettling. Not because it's empty, but because it resists extraction. In a culture that rewards exposure as connection, choosing not to participate can look like rebellion. Or worse, superiority. But the truth is quieter than that. Some people simply learn that their inner life is worth protecting, that not every version of themselves deserves an audience, and that the most powerful form of autonomy today is deciding who gets access to you at all. So maybe they're not invisible. Maybe they're just standing somewhere the spotlight doesn't reach, watching, waiting, unmeasured, and free.